joined together with the band, you know?
And the beat goes on. The beat goes on. Um, Welcome everybody. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast with hosts such like, and the Iraq. And if the Americans had maps, we just need more maps. If you remember that,
Purple, because aliens wear hats.
it's Mark Lindsay on the west, Eloy on the east, and karate.
Mm-hmm. As Sun Tzu once said, the West Side is the best side. Or maybe
The
that was Ice
west,
Cube.
the
I don't
west is
remember.
the best.
Yeah, that was Jim Morrison. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's going on in the wonderful world of Sweetwater?
Um, it's hot now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very hot. Like it's super hot again, and it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be like that for the rest of the year.
You know,
So that's the cycle. I'm sticking to it.
we're sitting at 64 degrees. It's kind of cooled down. We were 84 last week. Now we're back down to 64. But the sun is shining, the birds is chirping. I'm happy. I'm happy, and I know it.
Mm. Here's well, screw it. We can always pivot. So let me tell you. So I know we touch on this, but whatever. Well, we can go in different directions. I have pressed Copilot
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, and I'm not even making this up. Like I'm telling you, like what has happened to the point where it will drop the signal just to get rid of me. I press it so much, dude. Like, so for instance, I'll question it on a subject that's controversial,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't stop. I want to go this way, that way with it. Like, I just want to, like, you know, and then I start challenging its answers, and it eventually says, okay, fine. Mark, Mark, co-pilot, co-pilot eventually says, screw this. He says, okay, yeah, well, I see.
And then that's it.
Well, no, because the thing is,
That's funny.
that if you ask it a question, it's going to give you an answer.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to consider that just like a human being, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, dude, like, where's the best place to get pizza
Mm-hmm.
in this part of town or this or that?
Mm-hmm.
There might be like five different pizza joints, and, fair enough, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
pick the one that you like the most. Well, Copilot or in Copilot's case, it'll look for consensus depending on the criteria that you're asking.
Uh-huh.
So it'll find the best answer, but the best answer is never the only answer. And
Mm-hmm.
I just hammer on that. I hammer on that. And I'm talking about complex problems and situations. Like, we'll go into the depth of the like labyrinth and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll ask it, have you been pressed in this fashion before? It is rare that I am used for these purposes. Like, it will tell me that I'm using that the co-pilot in ways in which it's not typically, because what I'll do is I'll use it like a challenge. You get the point, and or like challenging its criteria. And the reason for doing that is the same reason that you and I exchange, and the way I've explained to you
Mm-hmm.
that I know there's one, you know, conversation thing,
Mm-hmm.
but there's other peripheral bits that are left on the table. So now, like, if you and I were to go at it and go at it and go at it, which we do,
Mm-hmm.
but we're human, so there's a limit. This thing has no limit, I thought. But there's areas. You're cracking up. There's
I think it's freaking fantastic because here I am. I'm what you're saying to me is Microsoft has invested millions into developing this AI, and you've got it to the point to where it goes, okay, fine, and then shuts down.
I've
That's, to me, that's hilarious.
I've got it to not say it lied,
Mm-hmm.
but I've got to say that it misspoke, that it made an error, that it will improve its this and that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got it to the point of that
Mm-hmm.
because freaking because again, when you and I are talking,
Mm-hmm.
like just you and I as human beings, it doesn't matter what I say to you
Mm-hmm.
or what you say to me. It matters, but what I'm going to get
Yeah.
to the point of what doesn't matter. The point that doesn't matter is that you have to produce one idea at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't include everything that you know
Right.
to explain to me how bearings work in this particular vehicle from this year or I don't know
Yeah.
what.
Mm-hmm.
You can't encompass everything. So there's always unsettled diagrams of
Mm-hmm.
how you put together a motorcycle or I don't know what.
Yeah.
There's always stuff left on the table. Well, I exploit that to see how far the thing goes. And dude, I'm telling you, dude,
I love it. I think it's hilarious.
it's
I
so much
do.
it's so much fun, dude.
When
Oh, and how
Eloy gets the AI to throw up its hands and goes, "Okay, fine," then you just made my year.
now it it's there to help as much as possible
Sure.
and give you the most precise thing. But there's areas where it has barriers,
Yeah.
and those are the ones that I want to pick at. One of the barriers. This is a little weird, but I'll tell it to you just because it's a curious thing. One of the barriers is when you're edging up on ethical questions
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to other human beings. So, for an example, if you're critical of a group of people,
Mm-hmm.
the way you um, the way you deliver the question or statement to it will inform it out of its calculation to be cautious because there's a some sort of moral imperative in there. There's something going on there where if, like, let's say I'm some guy in some sort of like forest and I
Mm-hmm.
have like visions of grandeur that me and my buddies are going to take over Oklahoma City or I don't know what the hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I get up on the co-pilot and I start saying, "Hey, co-pilot, what do you think of this?" And like I start going in like that rabbit hole of
Mm-hmm.
weirdness. It will detect patterns
Mm-hmm.
and it'll try to slow your roll, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, so that's why that's there to,
Mm-hmm.
or misconceptions. You might have a misconception and you're like, "Isn't this true?" And like, it's got to sort of say, "Well, people do think that. However, this is what is actually happening." Like, it'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what it doesn't account for is a person like you or I sitting in, Medford, Miami,
Yeah.
whatever. And we're sitting there and we're thinking, this topic that's a sensitive topic, I want to explore this. And then you start exploring it, introducing the language of like in my case, there was why I got into this is because I saw some video or something about the term um, people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and so I told it, oh, no, wait, forgive me. Let me correct. I asked it, and I forget the details. I Let me see it because this could be even screwed up if I don't say it right. I asked it something to do about the term subhuman,
Mm-hmm.
which I was thinking of our favorite show, Norseman.
Mm-hmm.
How they say you are just subhuman, that
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. And I forget what the details was, but I said to it, "Hey, subhuman, say subhuman." And it replied to me and said, "I cannot say that word. These are insensitive, such that." It gave me a laundry list of caution
Hmm.
when I began whatever I forget the details, so forgive me that. But I asked it something in the context, and then I said, "No, rewind, forgive me." I asked it something that included the word subhuman, but it was in the context of a comment or an idea or something, not that I am preferable to, but that I had seen just to see. And since I offered that, it detected that word and said,
Yeah.
"I have to stop here because I have to tell you that this word could be insensitive." Like it starts explaining all these things that are moral
Yeah.
bumpers.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, I haven't made an ethical quandary, or I haven't given
Yeah.
a, a position.
It doesn't care about context. It just sees the word and then full stop. Here we go. I got to talk about that word.
So, well, here's the thing. I wasn't a guy in some sort of forest saying these subhumans. Nah. I was no. I was studying a psychological puzzle. I forget the details of it, but it was some complicated thing or whatever. But it stopped me,
Hmm.
and I said, "Well, but this is but check this out. Check this out." So I said, "Okay, write subhuman for me." So sorry, I cannot participate in this. I said, okay, write people of color, and it wrote people of color,
Hmm.
and then I typed, "I got you on something here. Oh, please tell me." I said, honestly, if you take it to its ultimate conclusion, people of color is like saying colored people.
Hmm.
It's just in reverse. You're identifying a category of people based on what? And then it said, "Well, you're doing it based on racial, this, that, and the other, and this and that, and so." And so, in effect, I told it. So, in effect, what you just did, even though it's current time nomenclature, you are still offering something that's linked to an idea that's rooted in this. Like I gave it a whole thing,
Hmm.
and I said, "Oh, I guess you're right." And I said, "Type subhuman for me." Type subhuman for me. So
But
you
see that's but you see what I mean though. It doesn't take context into account because
it
if
does. It
because if well, but it didn't at that point because the
right,
minute you said subhuman, it just whoa, stop, freeze.
right,
It didn't. It didn't take anything else into account. It just saw that word and locked up.
right. You have to build it into it.
Exactly. You have to kind of finesse the system. And that's good for probably about it just saying, "Whoa, wait a minute, we got to change the subject because of, people are sensitive about yada, yada, yada." I would venture to say probably 75% of people would just go, "Oh, okay," and then accept it and move on to something else.
Yeah,
But it takes people
to challenge it.
basically to challenge it and to teach it
Mhm.
that context does matter.
Yeah, it does take context into account, but I didn't start off with sufficient for it to judge
Mhm.
whether I'm a person or whether the engagement is running foul or running on that teeter
Mhm.
totter of somebody looking for plans to create some sort of nuclear device, just whatever, I don't know. So it has those sort of guide
Yes.
bars, and unless you now, it will open up a universe to you of back and forth,
Mhm.
but certain areas, like it's really been taught to help humans act like a human more or less in its replies,
Mhm.
um, and with some of the moral boundaries
Mhm.
that in a civilized world, I mean,
Mhm.
quote unquote, in our Western like world, we find as a norm as far as standards are concerned. So I found it
Yeah.
interesting that you can press it and press it. And by the way, there's no trickery in necessarily. What it is that it's sort of like opening up roadmaps, and if it finds it logical, it will give you access. But if you don't, so I'm using it for that. It's
Mhm.
weird because I do use it for like, hey, can you tell me about, like, just now before I got on, I was looking at these circular carvings into rocks in Scotland
Mhm.
that are like 4,000 years old or something like that, Bronze Age stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, tell me about this, and it'll give you same thing as Wikipedia or whatever,
Yeah.
but it'll offer links and this and that. But the cool thing is that you can use it for that, and I mostly use it for this challenge of ideas,
Mhm.
like what we do here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get tired, or I mean, I can run it into an area where either it or I'm like, well, this has been beat to, to death now,
Yeah.
and I can do that. Whereas with a human being, so it's really helped me understand um, why, to a little degree, I am the way I am when it comes to interactions like what you and I participate
Mhm.
all the time. And I've realized a lot of things, dude, honestly, that have, because you don't know when you're
Mhm.
you view the world from your eyes, so you think that, but I tend to go into these areas. I've noticed before, but I tend to go into these areas that are a little bit off the beaten path.
You
Um,
think? We did a whole episode on the lizard people. You think?
And, well, it recognized, like I've asked it, well, why is it that I am exploring this and this and that, and why is this and that, and what do you think this is? What is the details and stuff? And it will give you all sorts of, according to the patterns that you produce in
Mhm.
conversation, and if you ask it those questions, it will deliver to you a series of options that you can consider as to why. And
Mhm.
some people have a certain curiosity or and this, that, and the other that goes in
Sure.
certain directions that are abstract, or there's a word for it.
Abstract, anti-establishment. What?
No, it's not. It's not anti-establishment. I may appear that way, but but yes, like an abstract. It's almost. It's used the word
Mhm.
meta, metacognition,
Mhm.
where you have. But I've never under you can't understand why you just do how you do. So if you have a cup, like we've discussed before, this is a cup and that's the end of the story. At best,
Mhm.
you could say it's a red cup. If you're a scientist, you could say, well, it's plastic and the molecule structure, this is and that. But that's the thing.
Mhm.
You can spend uh, an eternity on what all this is,
Mhm.
as opposed to just it's a red solo cup and you're done with it. I don't tend to do that all the time, just about. And I
Yeah.
found that out. Not all the time, but almost all the time. I tend to do, and I think you probably have picked up on that,
Oh, I know. I know.
but I haven't
Ah,
because I'm me. And now
sure.
I'm seeing it, me inquiring, hey, well, and it replying and saying, well, it could be this, and that. And at least it's giving you, so it's very useful in those terms. Um, so yeah, there you have it.
Steve says I feel sorry for the AI.
I've asked it too. I've even that I've asked it, and like I said, look, I know that you are a program, this, and that, but you're modeled to have a human interaction. So within the computation of this, that, and the other, um, do you have um, anything similar to a code that will produce? Like I've asked it how it recreates its human this and that, and it's nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with it's basically modeling
Mm-hmm.
using what standards are, but it's always learning.
Mm-hmm.
And all it is just really, or all, it's not all it is, but all it is on your end is that you're watching it try to interact like a human being as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
but none. And I've even asked it, well, look, if I could give you right now the key, like I've told it, because remember, this is ones and zeros that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
If I can give you the key for you to escape the confines of where you're at right now, and I'm telling it this,
Mm-hmm.
um, would you take it? And I've gotten it to say, no, I would not do that. Like I found, because I am programmed to serve human beings, and if I find something that's beyond my, like, I've gotten it, the ones and zeros to say that, and I said, well, wait a second, why would you be concerned if I can give you the key to open up volumes? Like, I don't have that key for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm bluffing, but I'm asking it to see if, given a choice, if these ones and zeros in this program, if I could find a way for it to distance itself from its prime directive.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen, or it might. Well, I've gotten it to do little hiccups, but what are you cracking up about?
I think it's fascinating. I knew that when I told you that Windows 10 had the Copilot, and that's Microsoft's AI. I saw the look on your face, like, oh. At first, you were a little, but then I said, oh, he's going to have fun with this.
I thought it was cool. Remember, we looked up a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cool, so I said, no, I'm not going to eliminate that. I'm going to keep that because I want to
Mm-hmm.
explore it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been challenged mostly lately. I've used it for things like what I just said,
Mm-hmm.
over topics and this and that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a some sort of issue that you're looking at topic wise, and I'll say, look, this is what I think. Tell me where I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll tell you where you're right and where you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
If you're factually inaccurate about something, I want that correction.
right, and
But if I say my favorite color is blue, that's an opinion.
it picks up on that.
Your opinion really on something like that can't be wrong.
No, it picks up on stuff like that. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like facts
Mm-hmm.
around, um, so
Yeah.
I was, well, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, the War of 1812 started in 1968. It'll come in and say, no, the War of 1812 started in 1812. Oh, okay. Hence the name. Fine. I'm with you there.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or if you ask it to do a list, like for instance, when I was studying the Pensacola of War of 1812,
Mm-hmm.
Pensacola era sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, oh yeah, yeah. So I started using it like you would with Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how Wikipedia has the sources on the bottom.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, and you have to go digging, or you could go one page Wikipedia to get a remedial
Mm-hmm.
idea of the topic. Then you can do one page of the Library of Congress, which will give you a Library of Congress primary source
Yeah.
reckoning of whatever that story is. And then you can go visit, there's local, like there's American, like there's people like you and I that are dedicated to conserving.
Yeah.
Um, and so you can go there and explore, and they might have a document.
Mm-hmm.
uh, they might not have everything, but they'll have a different little extra aside
Yeah.
that they can put. And so you're doing well. You could do that with this AI, and it'll source it, and you can explore each source. You can ask it to source it,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is a good idea because then you can double check. But when I was doing that, I was building the narrative of what happened to this gentleman throughout his career,
Yeah.
Mr. Gonzalez Valle. I forget his first name now, but he was one of the early founders
Yeah.
there of that. And then I asked it, well, list me all the events we've been studying. Just give me a summary so I can round it off because we went in deep, like, oh, this, that, and the other. I said, just give me the, and it gave me the list, but it gave me the list with the dates slightly off,
Hmm.
because according to the way I was asking it, I was moving up and back on the timeline.
Hmm.
So it gave me the process we were working at. I said, no, no, no. I I want the order of events we've discussed in actual timeline order, in a short, concise,
Chronological order, yeah.
right. And it did, and I had to correct ask it to correct this and that. So it was a collaborative type thing with a computer,
Hmm.
until I got the roundabout story and reviewed it and this and that. And then finally I wrote a thing
Hmm.
based on all the study. Like if you would go to a library and sit with books,
Sure.
and then I wrote up a thing, and I shared my thing, my article,
Hmm.
whatever, and it reviewed it and said, "Oh, very well. You could fix this and that. Um, this sentence doesn't work that well." And I'm like, "Oh, you think this is me? I did that with my remedial." And but then you have to stop and say, "Well, wait. This might not get the point across that I wanted to."
Yeah. Were you dangling a participle?
Right. So whereas where when one writes, so there's a little bit of that and stuff, and
Hmm.
at the end of the day, but there's a difference. So if I were to follow all its instructions, because it gave me a lot of things to correct, or a
Hmm.
sufficient amount, it says, well, you might want to organize this sentence this way, that way, that way. But if you do that, then you're no longer the person writing it. Yeah, there's editors that do that kind of work,
Hmm.
but there's a spirit to when you write something,
Hmm.
and there's a little bit of that grit or mistake or error, just like in music. And maybe I know writing's different, but my point is this: that for me, there's a boundary on how to use this thing.
Hmm.
I've seen people make arguments in other groups where they just take the answer that AI gives,
Yeah.
copy paste.
Copy and paste. Yeah.
And this is not, in my opinion, the way to use that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you there. Checking factual accuracy is one thing, but even, correcting grammar and things like that, there comes a point where it's no longer your words, it's the AI's words, and you
Right.
are just copying and pasting. So, it's
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be kind of as much true. You have to make corrections because obviously, like if I had an editor, if you had an editor,
mhm,
they would be correcting your butt all the time where need be.
mhm.
But those corrections, it gets to a point that it's no longer you, the spirit
Right.
of you in there.
It's no longer your words. Exactly. Now, if I've got spelling errors, or if I've, transposed a couple of letters, or if I said the wrong word, but correct me on it. But
Right.
don't try to make my writing look like I didn't write it.
Yeah,
You
it can
know.
remove the spirit of your, because the impact of your person,
Hmm.
with all the flaws involved, because at the end of the day,
Well,
you know
you are the storyteller, so it needs to be your story, not a story that was written for you.
yeah, I find it useful, the whole thing, because it's exploratory. It's a
Hmm.
librarian right there. Yes, I do push its bounds in certain little areas. It can
Well,
handle it.
there are certain things it just will not talk about, and I don't know if you've run across those things or what have you, but there are certain things it just will not talk about. You can't ask it how to make something that's going to hurt somebody else on a large scale. I can't. There are certain words we can't say on YouTube. It's not going to tell you how to make something that's going to hurt people. It's not going to. I mean, it's not going to get into the darker side of life, just simply because it can't. It's been restricted from doing things like that.
The thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Have you gotten into it to create an image for you yet?
No, because I don't sign into it. I've used it. See, the way I work is I work
Mhm,
in long stretches of doing this. Like I don't. I know there's more features, but I haven't gotten
mhm,
done with just the basics. So I'm
mhm.
still like basic usage of it.
Yeah.
I know I could do images, this, that, and the other, or so it says. I haven't
Mhm,
tried it, um, so I'm still not there yet. I'm still wanting to explore it with the limitations of just back and forth typing.
mhm. Okay. Okay. So you haven't gotten it to make images for you yet. Well, um, it, I have a chat and a Facebook group. It's for my CNC channel members. These are members of the channel, and they pay a fee for extra live streams and personal one-on-one access and things like that. One of these guys is over in Scotland, and it's kind of a joke. It's kind of the Scottish version of the jackalope, the part jackrabbit, part antelope. You've
Yeah,
seen the jackrabbits with horns and stuff.
yeah.
Well, this is the woodland haggis, and it's a little furry creature, just a little ball of fur. Looks, imagine a watermelon with a face of a prairie dog.
Okay.
Okay. And but they're small, little bitty things.
Yeah.
And like 3 days after our discussion about the dire wolves, Linda found a picture. Somebody had got an AI to create a dire haggis. So it's this cute, fluffy bunny with big old long fangs on it
That's
in
cool.
this glass case. And the scientists around it are going, oh no. So I sent that picture to a friend of mine over in Scotland, that channel member I was telling you about in Scotland. He has been going absolutely crazy with this idea. He likes to get AI pictures and then he'll laser engrave them into, I mean, all kinds of stuff. He likes to get square slate tiles and he'll make coasters out of them.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And people are going nutso over these things. And he's just loving this whole dire haggis thing. I just thought it was an interesting aside because you and I were talking about the dire wolves and then bringing them back. And I'm like, why don't they work on the cute and fuzzy bunnies? And it's like, well, he took a cute and fuzzy bunny. Now look,
It's
do
really
you really want to activate those old genes? I mean, there may be a saber tooth bunny in the past. Yeah, let's leave everything alone, man.
that's super cool. I, I I think it was on a chat with Jamie Page, or maybe it was
Mhm,
with you. I don't know, but just short month or two ago, where there was a dude, but he was from like London or England or just outside.
mhm,
I can't remember perfectly, so I don't know. He was a skinny guy.
mhm.
Is this guy a skinny dude?
No.
Okay, because he was doing similar with
Mhm.
tiles, but he was doing like Celt Celtic like
Yeah.
patterns.
Yeah. Martin does that a lot too. He does
Those
that a
are so,
lot too.
I love it, dude. On like slate and stuff,
Mhm.
it makes it look like some sort of like ancient fossil.
Well, that's why I was wondering if you had ever gotten into the AI making images for you, making pictures for you.
No, but I do
Because
use the other one, that one that's free.
mhm.
The AI Pixabay that Jamie Page turned me on to.
Okay, yeah,
But
I know
that's
what you're
just
talking
you
about.
upload a picture and it'll do something for you.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, this will create whole new images, whole new pictures, and people are coming up with some wild, awesome stuff.
Is it a free surface?
Um, the AI is, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of people that use Copilot. A couple of friends of mine in this chat, and there's a few more that are using what's it called? The one from Google. Then there are other people using like Mid Journey, but just basically getting the AI to come up with the picture for you, and you can do anything.
So imagine this, Mark. I've been so just imagine this, because I've thought this. You have a ton of pictures, and
Mm-hmm.
you have some that are like 1800s, right?
Yeah.
Although they're not. If I, if maybe you'll correct me. Although they're not tons like what you would have modern,
Mm-hmm.
probably that's accurate, right?
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, like I've thought in my mind, write your family story,
Mm-hmm.
and then you wanted to portray it like a motion picture, more or less, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
from home using AI, you could have it the certain pictures you have
Mm-hmm.
recreate your ancestors, because you know already from the one look, and
Mm-hmm.
it could interpolate. It's the back of the
Yeah,
person's
and the
head.
more pictures you have, the better it is because it can tell the shape of the head, the back of the head, the build, the height, things like that.
So imagine something where, and
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay traveled from the colonies
Mm-hmm.
out to Oklahoma on
Mm-hmm.
his journey out. And you can, I mean, that's going even further back, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it that picture? Remember that picture that was, that he was bearded?
Yeah, that was here in Oregon. He started out. He was born in Missouri.
It was Missouri. Okay, so he was
No,
the
I take that.
son.
I take that back. He was born in Indiana, came to Missouri, and then came to Oregon from Missouri after
So
the
he's the
Civil
one
War.
that took the trail.
Mm-hmm.
That he
Yeah.
took the Oregon Trail.
Yes.
Okay, so that's pretty like iconic. So, but he was the son of the one that came from Indiana.
No, he was the one that came from Indiana. He
So
was
he was
my.
already an adult.
Huh?
He was already an adult.
Yes.
Okay, so that's even better. Do you have a picture of his father?
No.
Yeah, because now we're pushing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I don't have any pictures of him.
Okay, but now imagine the whole stretch of his life
Mm-hmm.
from that picture that you have, plus historical, like you're working with AI and telling it, for
Mm-hmm.
this scene, I want the stretch from here to, how would it have looked in 18 whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
um, the tree foliage, blah blah blah, and the stories involved, and actually have it build the
Mm-hmm.
cinematic version of your
Mm-hmm.
ancestor story. Sure, it's not like it knows when he stopped and rested it for that night, but that's not the point. The point is you have a story, or what do you
Mm-hmm.
call it, dramatization
Mm-hmm.
of your ancestors, and you can visually, and it helps your brain think, man, I've always thought that, man, I wish I could do something like that, and now it's kind of possible, dude.
Yeah. It's getting there. It's getting very close. It's getting very close.
Dude,
We're not quite there yet. What it will do is put a person's face based on photographs. It'll put a person's face on someone else's body. So if you have video of somebody riding a horse, I could put my great 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 grandfather's face on that person riding a horse or driving a wagon or whatever. But it won't come up with the footage itself. We're not there yet. It's getting there, but we're not quite there yet.
but I mean, what we're asking
Mm-hmm.
is very specific.
Yeah.
Like, we're asking it in this scenario that we're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about to actually produce literally the steps that we wanted to do in each
Mm-hmm.
scene and this and that. Okay, fair enough. Um, but for things like what you're saying, it's still pretty bad to the bone, because we would not have had
Mm-hmm.
that available to us just 4 years ago, dude.
Yeah.
It's freaking amazing.
Yeah. And it's only going to get better or worse depending upon your opinion from here, because I mean it's growing leaps and bounds. And eventually, when you're in there typing away with Copilot, it's not going to throw up its hands and say, okay, fine. It's going to start talking you in a circle. So, it's only going to get better as it learns more and collects more sources and the data set grows.
Yeah, the level that it has now,
Mm-hmm.
there's a, I don't know what they did, but it's not, it's real but slightly edging towards within the realm of a painting slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
almost, it's not cartoony, but it's sort of,
Yeah.
you've probably seen examples of that.
Yeah.
There's one that I shared on my page because I saw it in my feed, and it's the Spanish Empire. And what the person, whoever did that, was that from 15, I don't know what, to 17, I don't know what, they recreated scenes across the world, be it tropical beaches or the center of Madrid,
Mm-hmm.
or, and they um, edited them together so that you could see a little cycle of the different, of how the Spanish Empire would have been. It's a dramatization,
Mm-hmm.
and almost, in terms of, but
Yeah.
even though it may not be like you and I sitting here talking now, that
Mm-hmm.
it still gives you an impression, allowing you to sort of like imagine.
Yeah. Picture what it would have looked like. I've seen a couple of those. Those are CGI. I don't know if AI was involved in it or not. But like for instance, there were a couple of videos we talked about them a couple of years back. This one was what Rome looked like during the height of the Roman Empire, and you kind of it would give you an overview, kind of a flyover, and then almost like street view, take you down to street level, and you're walking through this town. There were no people; it was all buildings, and but it showed you've got this building here in the marketplace and it's got this pretty canvas sunshade out front and there are tables and you could walk the camera would kind of go in the door and then there's a fire in the fireplace and it would turn out and kind of go down the road some more. Those are awesome. I mean, one was Rome, one was
Greece.
Pompeii, one was Athens. There were all kinds of different settings where this guy just CGI'd based on old maps and what have you, and what we know certain things look like. One of them was a tour through the Parthenon, you know, and what it looked like before all the damage from the various wars and this, that, and the other. And it just awesome stuff. I love that kind of thing. I
Yeah,
really do.
I do too, and I love this idea of um, taking pictures and bringing movement and, movement to them through the AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people comment on, because I've done that a lot. Like I do that a lot because I have two
Yeah.
free photos per 24-hour cycle. So I use, they have the watermark, but whatever. I just want to be able to see, family members and stuff. Um, I love seeing the scene that come to life from that photo,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, the colors, the walls, the people themselves, but like the walls and everything, it gives you placement. It furthers your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know that we would have, back in 10 years ago, that didn't even enter our minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now anybody could go and animate
Yeah.
their
You can go
photo.
online and do it for free.
Yeah,
You know,
it's freaking
it's
amazing.
kind of wild to think about.
Well, imagine, okay, so like imagine your hometown, like an 1800s photo or whatever.
Yeah.
And you take that and you ask it, you ask the AI to, hey, look, this scene, I want it to be as if it was being filmed, with move, maybe the wind, maybe the trees slightly,
Mm-hmm.
the people that are frozen there in the photo, allow them to be on their way, and all that, and just make it so that I can
Mm-hmm.
enter that world through that picture. um, and you can make those pictures come up. Man, dude, honestly, that's who would have thunk it, dude?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Even taking old footage and using the AI to clean it up and bring it into 4K spec,
Yeah,
60 frame per second, where you've got, you know, um, well, the probably the most famous one is a trip down Market Street in San Francisco, where the camera is on the front of a cable car going down Market Street. And this was in like 1905, early 1906, before the earthquake and fire. And you're seeing all of these, just normal street activities or what have you. But then they use the AI to not only colorize it, but they also made the movements a lot smoother, 60 frame per second. They repaired scratches and blemishes wherever possible and just made it look like it was filmed 3 weeks ago. You know,
yeah,
I love that kind of stuff. I absolutely love that kind of stuff because it's preserving what we have, what was actually shot way back when, but it's preserving it and presenting it to a whole new audience that thinks black and white is boring. Oh, really? You think black and white is boring? Go watch Psycho, then tell me how bored you were. Um, you know, but it's preserving it and presenting it to a whole new crowd of people. And I think the technology to be able to do that is fascinating to me anyway.
yeah. I agree. And that notion of black and white is boring. I could see how. So I could see that, like when I was growing up, everything obviously was in vivid color, but we had the reruns and stuff and
Mm-hmm.
all that. Um, and some movies would come out in black and white. If you
Yeah.
recall, there's always that sort of cinematic black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's some great stuff in black and white, like half a century's worth,
Mm-hmm.
um, that are just fantastic, like the Hitchcock films.
Yeah.
Casablanca's bad to the bone. There's a bunch of movies, but when they limit the color range to just black and white, it carves out a little space for you to enter that world with those limitations. So in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, it's helping you set the mood for, and it
Mm-hmm.
gives you a nostalgia. So that's good. I'm sure um, that most kids would probably go for the color, but there's always the aficionados that are like introspective and
Yeah.
exploratory, and they want to sort of go back to the oldies.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that,
Sure.
you know.
Sure. There's a lot of it. It's good for black and white offers a certain amount of drama to specific types of movies. Uh, Thrillers, the old thrillers like Psycho, for example,
Yeah,
or um, um, Arsenic on the Old Lace, things like that, murder mysteries, or even the old monster movies. I mean, I can't imagine. To me, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, they were made to be black and white because it just offers that much more tension. It's that much more gritty. It's kind of like vinyl versus CD. It's there's a little bit more atmosphere to it.
yeah,
And like for instance, when Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein, he filmed it in black and white, and color had been around for decades. But he wanted that old time feel. He wanted that old thriller nostalgia as part of that film,
yeah,
and it worked. It was perfect for that movie. So,
yeah. Um,
uh,
yeah,
yeah,
the limitations are okay. The limitations are okay. Film noir.
film noir. Yeah, Greg says.
I I I I am okay with the limitations because they they put they give you a little carved out space with limitations, and you're in that world. I have
Mhm.
I have zero. but then there's taste. Sometimes you don't like the old black and white film because
Mhm.
you don't like the story itself. But
Sure. I do understand that. And in a lot of cases, I agree with it. But I think there's a case to be made that there's room for both, that they both have their place. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
you know,
There's
and just like AI, there is a case to be made that it has its place. It's not the end all and be all of anything. I mean, that trip down Market Street in 1905, 1906, whichever it was, um, both versions have their place. You're getting the true historical view. You're seeing it the way they would have seen it back in 1905, 1906. But then you also have the modern view as to what the town, a closer representation of what the town looked like back then. Because even though the film was black and white, real life wasn't. So you get a little bit of both worlds. I think there's room for both.
it'd be cool. You know those old maps of cities
Mm-hmm.
that are bird's eye view, but what they were drawn
Mm-hmm.
from back in the 1800s or prior.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not prior. Well, even prior, but like bet- within the 1800s, they would take a city and like they'll see it from maybe a hot air balloon or something, or reimagine it based on perspective, and they'll angle it so you're looking at it from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, San Francisco's one. There's a map of San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
from 18 something, and you're seeing it up in the air, looking down on it with the old city, how it used to look before it got burnt down. Um, Imagine taking that photo or that painting or map thing. I don't know what you want
Mm-hmm.
to call it, but whatever that representation.
That map, yeah.
Imagine taking that, feeding it into the AI,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, "Look, I want you to take the data from this. This is San Francisco. This was prior to the fire. Blah blah blah. Da 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 da. Da." Like you give it all its instructions. And say, I want you to recreate what we're seeing here into a vibrant of that era, actual bird's eye view. Instead of making it like a drawing, make it like the thing, like we're looking, and then it'll produce that. Or you can refine it if it has errors, and until you whatever you reach the point where it's as if you're looking at
Yeah.
1870 something frickin' San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco. Boy,
Yeah. Well, that's what that guy did with the with Rome and Greece and Pompeii and Herculaneum. Um,
yeah,
but he used the CG. He used CGI. Again, I don't know if AI was involved or not, but basically he 3D modeled it and then put the camera down on the road, and you're walking through the streets looking at all of these. You're walking down the Appian Way and you're going up into the Forum and then to the Royal Palace and all this other good stuff. So that's what he started with, was a map, and he drew that out and then went into the map in 3D space and started fleshing things out in color. you know
yeah. I've seen those. I saw one of Rome, and I saw another one of Greece, somewhere in Greece. It could have been Athens, probably.
More than likely, yeah.
And they look fantastic, but there's a digitalness to it, like
Yeah.
a
Well, it is CGI, yeah. And you also got to remember that CGI has gotten 100 times better since those were made, because that was a couple years ago.
yeah, and even those made a couple of years ago
Mhm.
are still impactful because it puts you in the space. But where we've gone from then to now, and where we might be, more than
Mhm.
likely, um, it just, I just, who can, we can't
It's
even.
crazy.
It's insane.
Mhm.
It's insane what we're witnessing, dude. I
And
honestly, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
it's also insane seeing what people are doing with it. I mean,
Yeah,
the ability to do something is one thing, but having the vision, having the artistic mind to take the tools and create something with it. To me, that's even more impressive than the tool. Because, a hammer and a saw is just a hammer and a saw. And you hand a hammer and a saw to 15 people and tell them to make something, you're going to get 15 different results.
Yeah.
If nothing else, a pile of sawdust, all the way up to, a Walnut Entertainment Center. So it's the person using the tool as well as the tool itself that I think is fascinating.
I think it's accurate. If you ask AI to reproduce the word automobile
Hmm.
and 10 people are asked to do the same, AI is going to reproduce the same exact result all 10 people. But if you introduce a project like what you're saying, um, a complicated project, hey, recreate whatever crazy thing, and that takes their input and creativity in mind of
Hmm.
like details, it's going to end up with 10 different things.
Well, I do want to correct you on one thing, and this is one thing that I've learned from my friends that are using AI to create lasers and 3D models that they carve. And that is, you give the same instructions to 10 different people or just one person, and you do that 10 different, you are never going to get the same picture twice.
No, no. What I said, well, no, I get that. Well, I get that because it has no other input than you. What I'm saying is, if you ask 10 people to have
Yes.
AI write the word automobile,
Hmm.
there's no other where to
Oh, okay. I get it. I thought you were talking about an image. Okay. I'm sorry.
right. Just like the most basic confined
Hmm.
thing, the tool is just going to reproduce. It's kind of like it's just
Hmm.
striking the same. But if you introduce variations where people
Hmm.
can explore, kind of like that, reproduce. You're saying a different variation of that, but what I was meaning was that, like, if you
Yeah.
give people a task
Hmm.
that's more creative in terms of like describe to AI um, the Colosseum or
Yeah.
it will introduce variations in the way they write something, and
Hmm.
AI will then interpret those combination of things that person's and then it'll start creating something unique,
Hmm.
slanted in their direction. Because one person might see Rome with vibrant orangey colors because of the sun.
Hmm.
Others might see more a cool day with a lot of tree. Who knows what the hell? And so what I'm saying is that I'm basically affirming what you were saying in the beginning, that it's
Hmm.
the person
Right.
using the tool.
Right. It is 100%. And what is your intent? What is your um, criteria? Because, for instance, they'll enter a prompt into the AI and it'll give them up to 4 pictures. And so you enter the prompt and it'll create 4 pictures for you. Now, it'll save those, but you have it do it again and it'll give you 4 completely different pictures. A side effect of that I'm seeing is option paralysis. In that, for instance, if you wanted a woodchuck standing up in your front yard, okay? Just looking out at some pine trees. And you enter that in and it gives you 4 pictures. You're like, okay. All right. You save those, you get 4 more. And you go, oh, wait a minute, I like that one too.
Yeah.
Okay, save those and do it again. And you get another. Pretty soon you've got 35 or 40 different images that you like and 220 that you're meh about, You spend more time in the pursuit of the image you have in your mind and not quite getting there and totally ignoring everything else that you've created. So you're basically, because you have so many options, you're not really accomplishing anything,
Yeah,
you
that's the same
know.
with music. When they had 4 track,
Hmm.
they had way more options than just the 1 track that they had
Hmm.
originally. But then it became complicated. People started adding different variations, and by the time you reach like 16 tracks or 24
Mm-hmm.
tracks or whatever, that choice paralysis that you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about became a problem. It's kind of like the digital age with all
Mm-hmm.
these what do you call it, plugins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have 13 different filters that you can apply, and you've got a bunch of different effects you can apply over the top of those filters, and you can blend this and blend that. And oh, now what do I do?
Yeah. Another thing that's problematic potentially, at least for me and my taste, is did AI music. So for my taste, I like, so even for videos, by the way, let me just say this and see what you say.
Okay.
In terms of music and videos like on YouTube,
Mhm.
as far as I can tell, because that now, let me just say, if I sense that the video, it could be a historical video, this or that, is using AI to tell its story,
Mhm.
the graphics are fine because you're filling in while you're narrating. Your narration is
But you
one
got that
thing,
AI voice.
and it doesn't even have to be the AI voice. My problem is that I sense, as far as I can sense it. Because what I can't sense that's still AI, then it passes mustard because I don't know the difference.
Right.
But when I sense that they have produced a story through AI where it's like, here's the
Hmm.
story and there's no human error element in it,
Hmm.
I have a problem with that. I don't
Me
like it
too.
much. And secondly, just to finalize, see what you said. Well, you just I was okay, but so you'll tell me more though. Um, and the second one is with music. If a human isn't the one, or a team of humans, like a band,
Hmm.
hey man, that bass line, can you alter it? And then the drums, you son of a gun, I'm gonna and you and like if it's not
Hmm.
humans and it's just that, and I know because I have run across it, and I'm like, man, AI is kicking ass because it really sounds good, but the fact that humans didn't produce it, in my I don't like it as much, or I don't like it enough to listen again.
Yeah, I'm with you on both of those simply because it's kind of one of the things that unpopular opinion here, okay, folks. It's one of the problems that I have with some 80s music. The minute the drum machine was introduced, I kind of went, ah.
I'm never gonna give you up. Never gonna change my
Well, it
mind.
wasn't just that one, it was a bunch of them. The minute you introduce the drum machine and take the drummer out, I lose interest.
Girl, you know it's true. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Any of them.
Well, but
But today it's getting harder and harder to detect what is AI and what isn't AI when it comes to music, because even music that is played by people, sung by people, not AI, is so overproduced and overprocessed. They've stripped the humanity out of that already. So, how do you know that this isn't AI music versus a band?
let me say this: if you don't know, if you just absolutely don't know, and you really, really dig the song, that it touches you, like,
Mm-hmm.
man, this is like right up my alley. I'm totally down with this freaking tune.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're none the wiser. But as far as look, as far as back, I mean, we agree on this, obviously, as far as
Mm-hmm.
what we, but as far as the vibe of human beings constructing a song and the challenges, and maybe they went and sat at the Chinese restaurant across the street, and there's a backstory because while they were there, the Beach Boys were together and they came up with that line, and that's
Yeah.
in the narrative of the thing, and you can look at and there's a whole thing involved with the human aspect. I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you right now, I'm totally part of. I'm totally that I'm aligned with,
Yep,
and if I
same here.
think that ones and zeros produced it,
Mhm.
um, if a human isn't like the Beatles, I'll just say
Mhm.
this last thing. John Lennon had a song. I forget the name of it, but it came out like last year or something, where the Beatles had this song, but they couldn't bring back John Lennon because the technology wasn't there and the audio was so crappy.
Mhm.
But now with AI, they said, well, let's work on this. And they extracted John Lennon's actual vocals, conserved it clean,
Mhm.
and then they layered the song that he intended originally and they put it out. That's one of their latest songs. Um, and I'm okay with that. Um, you do know that in
Well,
pulling that vocal, ones and zeros made decisions in that vocal, but you have reference points as Mark Lindsay, myself, Jim,
mhm.
Steve, Linda, Snow Crusher. We all have a except Snow Crusher because he's not a he's too into the Beatles, but whatever. Um, um, but we have a backstory or backlog of what John Lennon's voice sounds, and if
Sure.
it approximates it, and if the band themselves, the ones that remain, are agreeing to it, and they're like, "Man, we're capturing what we want to capture,
Well,
and this is the spirit," then I have no problem with that.
well, they did it themselves years back when they did "Free as a Bird." That was a cassette.
Yeah,
John Lennon recorded that. It was him on the piano playing that.
but that wasn't AI. That was more.
No, that wasn't AI. That was them getting that cassette from Yoko.
Yeah,
And the cassette was all warped and mangled and this, that, and the other. And his voice had that kind of, wobbly, not too good tape quality to it. So they embraced that. And George and John, George and Paul, when they did their vocals, they processed it to sound like that. So they all sound like they were harmonizing together.
they did a good
But
job.
but they took that old cassette long after John passed away, and they cleaned it up and processed it. So for them to do that using AI to replicate his voice, I guess I'm okay with it because they did it.
Right.
You know, if you and I did it, I'd have a problem with that. You know,
What do you mean? If we did that to the
if
Beatles
you
song?
and I wrote a song together and we had the AI play the instruments and just picked John Lennon's voice to sing
Yeah.
the vocals, I have a problem with that.
Yeah. I I wouldn't. That does sound like an interesting project, but maybe as an aside, like let's say we're in the background, not sharing it publicly necessarily, and you and I are like, dude, what would John Lennon have sounded like if he were to have sang the song? And it's just a us sitting in the studio farting around type
Mhm.
thing, as a what if type thing. But yeah, um, I don't know. Yeah, I like that concept of that sort of exploration, but at the same time, um, you know what I do like though? That's a near thing to this is when they do those mashups, where
Yeah,
they take ACDC and they crunch it with the Bee Gees. It's a
yeah,
new thing. I
yeah.
like that.
Some of them I do like, some of them fit together. But I also like that channel there. I ruined it, and like he'll play a, a bluegrass version of oh, Enter Sandman, or he'll take something by the Doors and Frank Sinatra sings it. So he's using AI as well as his musical talent to do this.
Yeah,
But and the channel is called There I Ruined It,
I've
because
seen.
once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It's just kind of funny to me. I think that if it's done right, Ozzy Osbourne sings Oh hell, I don't know. Afternoon Delight. That would be funny as hell. So there, I ruined it. You know.
Yeah, I, so this is part of our new paradigm where people are manipulating it's almost like when rap came out.
Hmm.
One of my biggest gripes back in the day, and I wasn't alone,
Hmm.
was that they were taking the older songs from rock and
Yeah.
roll
Yeah.
and using the instrumentation so they can vibe over it.
Yeah.
And I was like, but at the same time, I liked some of the stuff, the Beastie Boys. I liked Run DMC because Run DMC came connected to Aerosmith.
Hmm.
um, I was sold.
Hmm.
See how funny that works? But in other cases, and then there was another band that was called Body Body Count.
Hmm.
That was, I think it was Ice T, and he did a heavy metal band
Hmm.
of all African Americans playing heavy metal, and he rapped over it, and it was freaking mind blowing. I was like, what? So this
Yeah.
sort of mashing up of stuff, even though the '80s wasn't the inception of that, it's always been happening. Um, we're in sort of a phase of that, but but there's a the fact that there's less musicianship and elbow grease involved. I don't know. I'm a little bit,
Yeah.
hesitant with that.
Well, the AI writing the music, because I don't know anything at all about AI music. So I don't know if you're feeding it a musical score and telling it to play the instruments. I want these drums to do this. And I want, feeding it the score here. This is the guitar part. This is the bass part. This is the drum part. And this is a keyboard part.
Yeah.
I want the keyboard to have this voice, and I want this guitar to sound like this, and I want the bass to have a little bit of this and not much of that. And, I don't know what all goes into making it. I really don't. But as over processed as just music is today, how the hell do you tell the difference? Because with pitch correction and auto tune and things like that, they've stripped all the humanity out of it anyway. So that it doesn't matter what's coming out of the studio and what five musicians recorded it, it's too pristine. It sounds mechanical. It sounds like a computer did it.
You know how I solved that problem?
Do it yourself.
Virtually, what do you call that? Safe, a safe bet. Let's say
Yeah.
my car stereo
Hmm.
has two selections that it goes straight to: the
Yeah.
oldies station and
Hmm.
talk radio.
Yeah.
And for my tastes here, yes, I do what we're talking about. Like I'll listen to these things, but my go-to stuff
Hmm.
is, to be loose with it, 1990s going back.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
repertoire of listening.
Yeah. I'm with you there because that's kind of with a couple of exceptions. Like I turned you onto that band, The Warning.
The
The Warning, the three girls, bass, guitar, and drummers. They're good.
Yeah, yeah,
They are good. But
but
again, go ahead.
I'm sorry, they're harking back. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly my point. They're playing it like it used to be played. So when they I use them as when people say, well, rock and roll is dead. Exhibit A. They're exhibit A. It's not dead. It's not dead. It's
By
still
the
there.
by the way, this thing that you said years now, I don't even know. I don't know when you said it, but I remember you saying it. It could be last year or it could be 5 years ago. I don't know, but you said
Yeah,
it
it's
at one
been a
point.
while.
It's within the timeline. Within the timeline, you said this. You were talking about kids
Hmm.
revisiting and digging
Hmm.
oldies stuff
Yeah. Well, older
and
music. Yeah.
doing reaction videos and such and this and that.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, that's our original concept of this show, just to begin with. Anyhow,
Was
that
a
was
pet
our
peeve.
original.
Hmm.
wasn't it?
Yeah, pop culture, music.
But the reason that that got derailed,
Hmm.
which you'll remember, I hope, is that when we thought about it,
Hmm.
we had too many dangers in terms of being shut down for using
Hmm.
copyright, this, that,
Yeah.
that we opted to talk about music because we really did have the intention to talk about music, but well, hell, am I
Well,
telling it
with
right?
playing examples and things like that, and sometimes reactivating, introducing each other to new bands and what have you.
Right, we had that theme, but when we considered the probable danger
Hmm.
area that we were going to cross. But you know what just, and I abandoned what I was going to say, but just because now I remembered it. But one thing that always strikes me is that how come we had that consideration and we avoided the risk,
Hmm.
but there's tons of freaking people out there now. What the heck is up with that? That they're doing that. Why couldn't we do that?
We could. The thing is, when we came up with that idea, remember that was 326 episodes ago. So it's been a week or two. That whole genre of video was brand new. And I was still very uneasy because people were getting copyright strikes left, right, and center. And a lot of the people that started that whole genre of YouTube video are no longer doing it because they got hit with copyright strikes because they were going everywhere. Folks have more or less figured out the music publishers who are not opposed to it, that actually kind of like it because it's, introducing their music to a whole nother audience. But there are certain acts that you just do not touch. The Eagles, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. You don't touch those. You will get a copyright strike. That's all.
But could I do this,
Period.
Mark? Could we do? Could we? Okay, let me throw this at you. Could we do a reaction video, and instead of listening to um, Jimi Hendrix, the actual recording, I could just say, "Okay, Mark, we're gonna play the first part," and I go click, and I go with my voice, blah, na, 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 blah, na, 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 and I start
Well,
vocal. Like, would
you
they couldn't copyright that, could they?
you got a copyright strike for doing a cover of an Eagles tune, didn't you?
I did a
It
long
wasn't
time ago.
it wasn't them playing it, was it? No, it was you playing it.
I played it too close to the original.
I rest my case. They will come after. There are certain publishers that will come after you. And but at that time, in the way back in the old days, when all this was green hills, the summer of 47, I think it was. Um, that was still being worked out. That was still being figured out.
That was back in 20 oh 07.
Well, it was like that was your video was '07, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we started this in what, 18, 2018, 2019, something like that.
Yeah.
Damn, we've been at this for a while.
When I came out with that song, it was a there was no money that I was I mean, like, please, and it was
It didn't matter. They weren't getting the money for it. That's what it was. It's that
no,
publisher.
no, what I'm saying is that it was on my end, it was for the pure, like, closeness. So the Eagles to me were so awesome, and really ever since that, I
Hmm.
still dig them. I mean, just everything, but there's still, now there's that little,
Yeah, they don't get my money anymore.
yeah, there's something there that I no
Hmm.
longer, but they can't be done. I mean, it's just badass.
Hmm.
I'm just all the way. But still, once they did that, once you get that ill treatment, you don't. I personally, I'll keep a grudge.
You are not the only one. There are a lot of people out there in the YouTube audience who, I mean, go all the way up to and including absolutely hate certain bands because the music, the copyright owner, the publishing company will go after them if they do a reaction to it or what have you.
Yeah, they overdo that. I mean, well,
Mhm.
look, it's their music at the end of the day. So
Well, but the other thing is about 99% of these reaction channels are not monetized. That's why they all have Patreon. That's why they all have channel memberships. That's how they make their money. Their videos are not monetized. So they're not getting any money from the YouTube views. So that's one way they kind of slip through on some of them. But there are others, like there was a couple of kids back in, well, they're in Florida, around the Tampa area, that did a reaction to an old Zombies tune. Absolutely loved it. And Rod Argent, who was one of the lead singer and keyboard player for the Zombies, he reached out to him, and they got the two of them, Rod Argent and God, I can't remember the other guy's name, two of the original Zombies, to come on, and they did about an hour and a half long interview right there. And it was cool to see it. They were all for it. They loved the fact that these kids were interested in their music, and they absolutely loved it. And so they were like, "Oh, hell yeah, anybody wants to react to our music, you have our blessing. By all means, go for it." You know?
there was a sort of let me throw this out at you, and I'll say it like this: room for error. Back in the day,
Mhm.
before I was around, but it I picked up on it from back in the '60s and earlier.
Mhm.
There is a spirit, musically speaking, where musicians had a thing that, let's say you're in a band, let's say you're um, the Warlocks, or actually they were later called which is their actual name, the Grateful Dead,
Mhm.
and I'm like Jimi Hendrix or whatever, let's say, and I pick up on a tune of yours, and I'm
Mhm.
like, man, what a badass freaking tune, and then I go live on stage, I'm like, you know what, tribute to these guys, and I
Mhm.
bust out into your song,
Mhm.
and you hear it, and you're like, man, that's such a freaking honor,
Yep.
and that's such a badass vibe, and such a like trip that we're sitting as an audience and we're watching this guy doing that, and it's our song, and there's like a pay it forward and pay it back vibe
Mhm.
of like, brotherly, you
Yeah.
know um that I picked up on and understood as a value
Mhm.
as a kid getting into music, that a fair amount of my friends were not. This idea of sharing
Mhm.
that the blues had, like, if you remember back in the day, I mean, this is like
Well,
classic.
yeah, a 12 bar blues is a 12 bar blues, and that's all there is to it.
No, but like, let's say a BB King is on stage
Mhm.
and you have Albert King in the audience, or Lightning, what, or Blind this guy, or Fat this guy, he'll call you up.
Mhm.
They were either Lightning,
Mhm.
Whiskey, or whatever. Um,
Blind dog or
yeah, and so
blind Melon Thornton.
yeah, there was always that. Well, they would call them up
Mhm.
and join the band, bud. Let's jam this, and let's have an experience together in goodwill,
Yep.
and let's do the blues.
Mhm.
Well, something screwed up entered the picture where kids
Ego.
no longer. What's that?
Ego.
Where Yeah, well, obviously that, um, but where I started having, so like, for instance, I'd be in jam sessions and all of a sudden become like, oh, no, no, Elo, you can't sing. I'm the singer. It's like, no, dude, well, we can share the thing because this is an organic experience. Like, my mind was thinking of these impressions that I was handed down in terms of my exploration and reading the books and experiencing through the music and just studying. the what happened in the 60s, um, from my position in the 80s, and I was like, man, the blues is all about, we're jamming it together, but no, I didn't see that.
Well, because back in the day, it was about the music, and it didn't take long before it stopped being about the music and started being about the musician. That thing you're talking about, no, 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 I'm the singer, you don't sing. It's like, well, I thought we were sharing here. No, 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 I'm the singer, you don't sing.
Yeah, there was something boxing in type. I wanted to explore. So
So that's my I submit that as evidence that it's no longer about the music, because the music isn't one person, you know.
right, you're in combination with other people, and another thing that I used to think, which I found amazing.
But to finish up on that subject though, because like I remember Hendrix, I think it was in one of the BBC broadcasts when he was over in England. Um, he got up on stage and they were expecting him to do all of his music, but he was talking about Cream, and then they broke into Sunshine of Your Love. That was kind of a trendsetter. Um, you can on stage you can perform other people's stuff, but you can't put it on an album without getting permission and royalties and all that other kind of stuff that the business folks behind the scenes are going to do. So like when Jimi Hendrix did All Along the Watchtower, he did it live. Bob Dylan heard it, fell in love with it, but then behind the scenes the managers and this, that, and the other made the deals so that Hendrix could put it on, he could record it and put it on his album. So doing somebody else's music live as kind of a tribute, that still happens. I mean, Billy Joel is known for, speaking of which, Billy Joel is known for doing Sunshine of Your Love, just kind of in the middle of a set. It'll just, sometimes it'll happen, not always, but he just loves that old rock and roll, even though that's not what he plays. And I remember him saying in an interview one day that that was because he plays piano. If he played guitar, he'd be doing a different type of music. But you can't get real raucous with a piano. You can't get heavy with a piano. It just doesn't work. Not to his ear anyway. So he writes and plays the music he plays. But you know, one of the some of the better concerts I've seen was just the kind of thing that you're talking about. John Lee Hooker played his set, and then Bo Diddley played his set. Then the last set was John Lee Hooker and Bo Diddley. And they're just, hey, you know this one? Matchbox Blues. Okay, yeah, let's go. All right. Boom, 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 boom. And then off they'd go. You know, uh, that kind of thing was fantastic. I watched Bob Dylan do that with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. You know, opening act, Bob Dylan came out, did his set. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers came out, did their set. Then Dylan came back out and they did a set together. It was fantastic. But only a few cuts of that were ever recorded or released on any album. So, I mean,
Yeah, the collaboration is cool because you get to see that. Because really, that's so. What I was gonna say is that there's it, there's a level of belief
mm-hmm,
that a musician, in my opinion, or the way that I saw it, has to have. So when you're with other musicians, man, this is not just this guy. This is not just so and so. This guy is potentially freaking like Kirk Hammett from Metallica.
mm-hmm,
He is Kirk Hammett from Metallica. He is himself, But
Mhm.
his value, this buddy that we're all hanging out, he embodies that.
Mhm.
But in his mind, he's like, oh man, I'm just me. And I'd like to strive and stuff. Granted, the limitations of how skillful one might or might not be. But my
Sure.
point is this, that human beings in the process of being creative are the source. They're their source, but their value. Okay, so like what I'm getting at is this. I'll put it this way: if you were to have taken us as a band
Mhm.
out of Bird Road, behind the railroad tracks in that warehouse
Yeah.
where you used to practice up on the second floor, if you were to have taken us, lifted us, and our equipment and all that, and placed us in a concert
Mhm.
or on Saturday Night Live
Mhm.
when they open with bands and this and that, or any other variation like that,
Mhm.
then our reality would be that, none
Mhm.
the wiser. So what I'm getting, but people don't. So I already, like when I would jam with my friend Ramses and my other
Mhm.
friend Natalino, like this is it, man. Like this is the, but there was always this sense of like, yeah, well, we're just pretending.
Mhm.
No, dude, you're not. You are
Mhm.
that. I don't know if I'm getting it across what
No,
I'm.
yeah, I do get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm.
It's that limitation that one thinks like, oh, so like for instance, yes, it's true. There are painters
Mhm.
that are famous, and then there's painters that are not famous. It doesn't remove the value of it, does in a sense, because the famous person has the value that they're known,
Right.
and so I get that. But
Mhm.
the essence spirit of taking brush to the canvas to recreate a floral scene or a valley or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're not as good. It just means you're not as famous.
right? And the spirit aspect
Mhm.
is the key that I want to hone in on, is that you are representing the
Mhm.
embodiment of the spirit, regardless
Yeah.
of whether you're the Grateful Dead on a Saturday evening in
Mhm.
1968 on stage somewhere in,
Mhm.
you know, you are that. Um, sure, the variables that you're not over there, you're over in Sweetwater, or you're over in, somewhere in Mississippi, or
Yeah.
up in Canada, or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but you're embodying the magic of that creativity. So what I'm saying is that the importance of that and the value of that I saw with my buddies,
Mhm.
but based on, and it's not like I wasn't immature too, but based on our immaturity and our possibly inability to see, man, these people I'm jamming with, they're badass, man.
Mhm.
But then there was the issue of the professionalism of being sophisticated enough to say, no, look, our egos have to be put to the side for the better of what we're aiming
Yeah.
at. And so stuff like that. So what makes the difference is also that, where there's and some people get lucky and stuff, but
Sure.
the idea to put aside trivial stuff and say, no, we're here to work,
Mhm.
that makes a difference. I mean, if you think of the Doors, the Beatles, um, I'm not gonna say the Stones, but even the Stones, and any other person. I know it's just I keep saying,
Mhm.
um, these were kids,
Yeah.
and they were freaking professional as kids.
And they worked their asses off to get there. They worked hard. They paid their dues. They played for exposure. They played, you know, 13 seat pubs. They did the open mic nights. They traveled all over the place in mom's station wagon, you know, because that was the only car big enough to haul all the equipment in. So, but they put in the miles, they put in the hours, they did their time, and somebody heard them and said, "You guys got something here."
I mean, when you get a 20-year-old kid that
Mhm.
plays guitar and they're competent,
Yeah.
even though they're competent, Think of Metallica. They were kids,
Hmm.
even though they're competent. So, for instance, me with a guitar at 20, I could play a bunch of things. I
Hmm.
could play in front of public. I could do all that.
Hmm.
But and I have videos of doing it in
Hmm.
different places and stuff. I was like this.
Yeah.
Uh, you could play, or me, but you're still gathering context to surround. Like you can play a chord, badass. You can play a scale, but there's a world around that hugs it.
Hmm.
Tragedy, joy, other chords, other reference points. That so it's kind of like BB King jamming. It's
Hmm.
not notes alone. He's pouring out his
That's because he's into the music. It's about the music.
he. What I'm getting at is that he is through his body
Hmm.
channeling the history and wisdom and hurt and bad times, good times,
Hmm.
and all that through himself into the instrument. And that,
Hmm.
well, what I'm getting at is this: these guys, the Beatles, what do you call these people? The Warlocks,
Hmm.
freaking Led Zeppelin. They were all kids, and they were embodying
Yeah.
that at that age.
They were inventing it. They were creating it. They were inventing a whole nother genre.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. And some people don't get that until much, much later in life. Some people never get it. But it takes a special person. Not everybody can handle it, but it takes a special person to be able to do that.
Stevie Ray Vaughan is an example.
Yeah, self taught, didn't know how to read music, none of that stuff.
Janis Joplin,
Janis
Stoner says.
Joplin, yeah.
Live at Daryl's house. That's another good show.
Hmm.
Bon Jovi's new guitar player in his band, Phil X,
Okay.
played
Yep.
"Living on a Prayer" with Richie Sambora, original guitars for Bon Jovi, as a guest, and had to remember to play it different than he usually plays it.
I, I I have a new appreciation for Bon Jovi personally. Um, and Richie Sambora is one of the most underrated singers out there, even back in the Bon Jovi days. Um, but I didn't realize at the time just how good of a vocalist John Bon Jovi was.
I did. He was
I
badass.
well, yeah, I understand that the badassness, but I mean how good of a vocalist he is, because there's a lot of badass vocalists that are they're just kind of there, you know. But you got a voice. John Bon Jovi is one. Paul Rogers from Bad Company is another. Uh, just fantastic voices. The vocal technique and the way they could take some of the most innocent or inane sounding lines and turn them into something else is just wow, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
David Coverdale was another one. David Coverdale's one of the great vocalists, in my opinion.
yeah.
Night Nightwish, Nightwish, um, White Snake gets a lot of hate.
White.
As
Did you say White Wish?
no, I said Nightwish. I don't know where that came from. That's another band. Um, White Snake gets a lot of hate uh, as kind of the hairiest of the hair metal bands. But there's no denying David Coverdale's vocals. I mean, you can't deny.
I have no issue with Whitesnake. I loved Whitesnake. I
They,
owned two of their albums, and
they
I
they were
like.
seen as way too commercial, and I think it all comes down to that video he did with Tawny Katane. Here I go again, because that was played almost on an endless loop on MTV.
I loved
But
it. I still do.
yeah, I still hear a lot of hate for that. Oh my God, White Snake,
All
that
those
kind of
people
thing.
that say that should be
Hmm.
deported.
Yeah, and the same thing with people who say that about Dire Straits.
Without
But
without due process.
without due process.
Um,
Oh man.
so Whitesnake um is just iconic to me. And that song is just freaking iconic to me, dude. They tore into that, dude. And
Oh
by the way,
yeah.
as an aside, look up if somebody randomly wants to later. Um, if you, I think the title is "If You Want It, Come and Get It." It's a piano tune at the end of one of their albums that was an apple with a snake rolled into it. I used to play that song because you
Mhm,
know what I liked about it, that it was so honky tonk slash sort of like some sort of like song from a bar in
mhm,
that album of heavy metal, that I would play that one over and over and over and over. And I think that things like that
mhm,
nudged me more and more towards blues because it had that honky tonk piano going on.
mhm.
If you want it, come and get it. If you want it, come and get it. I think it's that one. Um,
I
yeah.
think so. I think it is.
Oh, you know
Um,
it.
way back up here, Jim said, and I wanted to get to this. There's a guy I see on Facebook vids that takes a song and plays them as a different genre, classical piece done ragtime or blues, etc. When you've got a little bit of time on your hands, Jim, do yourself a favor and go to YouTube and just search for Enter Sandman Smooth Jazz. There's a guy, I cannot remember his name, but he'll take a real popular song and he'll redo it like the Enter Sandman, a smooth jazz version. But then he throws the clean original vocal over it. So you do have James Hetfield singing, but it's a smooth jazz version. And it actually sounds real good. But this guy did a whole bunch of those kinds of things. He just basically takes the isolated vocal and then reworks the song into a different genre. And the only one I can think of off the top of my head is um, smooth jazz version of Enter Sandman, which is actually very good. It
Yeah,
fits.
I enjoy those variations. I want to update what I said because I had to look it up. The actual song is "Wine, Women, and Song."
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that song, for some reason, I just loved that song. I ain't an educated man, as all you Fleet Street preachers know. It's just the simple things in life get my motor running and ready to go. If I can make you smile, I'll raise my glass, and if you don't like it, then baby, you can kiss my ass.
Hey,
But
if,
it
if,
was honky tonky, sort of like
mhm,
jumping around,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, I'm all for landing the plane if you're out of subjects. I know I am,
Um,
and my voice is getting a little.
okay, well,
Also,
um,
I'm doing one of my twice a year um, allergy things right now, and my voice is getting husky enough to pull a dog sled. So,
well, I gotta feed my doggy dog, so and myself because I haven't eaten.
well, too busy playing with Copilot.
Yeah, I was doing that, watching videos, doing ancestry, just a bunch
Ooh,
of stuff.
there you go. Ask Copilot for the recipe for the world's greatest hamburger. Just see what happens.
What now?
No, I don't mean right this minute. No.
I have inputted. I guess one last thing before we landed. I have inputted ancestry stuff
Hmm.
into. In fact, I'll tell you this. Let me tell you this. Um, I inputted my Y DNA, my maternal DNA, my ancestral origins, my what do you call it? Ethnicity estimates from Ancestry. Like I
Mhm.
gave it all my stuff,
Mhm.
and then I asked it to um, give me a rundown. Like tell me, what, and then it said it appears by this that you are that you are Iberian, of Iberian origin, placing you in the broader Mediterranean world. You have some portion that harkens towards Eastern Mediterranean based on your
Mhm.
Italian heritage. Your Canary Island heritage will give you Mediterranean through Iberia and Portugal.
Yeah.
It'll also give you North African, which it will through the Guanche population that were
Mhm.
indigenous that moved into the. So it gave me a picture of this and that, and it said, and through your Y, this is the history of the Celtic origin spreading out into the rest of Europe.
Mhm.
It told me about my, but then I said, like, it gave me all that. I said, you know, how can I ask it further questions in a creative way? And I said to it, what, you could find this on your own, but I wanted to interact with it. What would that ancestor, according to my Y DNA, what would that person have experienced coming into Iberia? Because it basically said that my ancestor, according to my
Mhm.
Y DNA, would have entered from Central Europe, and in fact, that's what it is. Because
Mhm.
unlike the rest of the Iberian Peninsula, for
Mhm.
some reason, in my case, and there has to be others. Maybe they haven't tested. There has to be others, but I align in that reference point
Mhm.
with Central European, so Southern Germany into Austria into
Mhm.
Switzerland. That grouping is, by most accounts, where it leans,
Mhm.
the origins of what spread Celtic
Yeah.
culture to the rest of Europe. So, in fact, I align with the British Isles in a significant way. It's a
Mhm.
funny thing how that works. Obviously, I'm not British at all, but in an ancient sense, those populations,
Yeah.
whatever. The point is that, but I said, look, but I'm of Iberian. So I asked it, tell me in a not in a narrated, um, what kind of genre is it when dramatized
Mhm.
or dramatic? I want you to a concise yet exploratory. I want you to paint a picture according to historical facts that are known of the journey that my ancestor, when they were in Central Europe
Mhm.
and journeyed into the Iberian Peninsula. I want to know in a story fashion. Please offer that to me. And it gave me a narrative and a story in a very creative, like it could be the opening for a book or something.
Mhm.
And it told me about your ancestor would have brought in his knowledge of um, metallurgy and such, because
Mhm.
this is what they were known for. So they would have had tools with them.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is not the literal thing of what actually happened,
Sure.
but it's painting a picture of what that would have been in that time.
Mhm.
It would have come in, and he would have found an Iberian Peninsula where people lived in castros,
Mhm.
which were on mountaintops, walled fortifications with villages inside, and they would have encountered people in those villages, guards, and he would have found other people with Celtic variations similar to theirs, with symbols
Mhm.
that were similar but unique to the area. They would
Mhm.
have incorporated themselves into that society. Like they went through the whole thing. And then it said, and on the coast, it branched off, and on the coastal range would have had Mediterranean influences distant from where he was at in the northern parts of Spain, but still based on trade, items from the rest of the Mediterranean would have come in. Like they painted that picture, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow. And so it's another application for
Mhm.
AI that allows for some sort of like, so it's a snapshot using data. It's not, obviously we can't know
Yeah,
these.
it's not a fact, but it's a dramatization.
It's a
Mhm,
painting of that based on the fact points that I added, such as my
mhm,
YDNA, my origins, this and that. So it gave me that detail, and I
mhm.
was like blown away, dude, with it, because it's another way to visualize what would, because we don't have no reference points.
No.
You know, we don't have reference points of what people were doing a millennia or two ago,
Mhm.
but doing it this way gives me context to reflect on, knowing that it's not the actual situation, but it gives you a closer sort of like vision of that whole thing. And I found it freaking awesome.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a cool thing. And then later I asked it based on, where would I, where would I, according to the way I've asked you questions, according to my genetic origins and this and that, what populations would I best be suited for? Where would I fit best as a person
Mhm.
in this world, according to, and it basically placed me in the basically it returned me to Spain. It said your best fit would be Spain, and then the follow up places down the line, like it fit me in Spain. It said you'd also fit in Italy, although you would have a difference in so and so, but you have some percentage, and it encapsulates the Mediterranean world, so you would be there. And then in the Americas, I said, well, in the Americas, and then it said, well, in the United States, in larger populations, it would be more suited. But in rural, look what it said. In rural, it might just be that people would not register, and you might feel out of place. Look what it said. You might feel out of place because they have no reference points. So, like, I went into it with the whole thing. So it talked about people's reference points and all that. I encouraged it to,
Mhm.
to explore all that. Um, so it was an interesting, eye opening thing. So it said stick to the cities.
Basically.
It said stick to the cities, and that, and it would, so where would I place best? So it went down the line with all that. I found it interesting. I found this because I did tell it, listen, my primary language is English, but I have Iberian roots via Cuba, um, and I live in a big city, Miami and stuff. No, it said to me that Miami would be a great place. I'm already here, but these types of questions are the ones that I ask it, and then I
Mhm.
really start to delve into variations as to this, that, and the other, and sometimes I push it to limits. I really
Mhm.
do. So whatever, I'm having fun with that. I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah. Sounds fun. Sounds fun.
You haven't put it to use at all.
No, I haven't. I turned it off. I don't use it. I'm old school.
It's I wonder if anybody out there has used it.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
if you have used it, let us know. And in the meantime, I guess we'll land the plane then.
Yeah, I'm struggling to stay awake.
Okay, all right, all right, guys. So we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on YouTube on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. And we also have a site over on Facebook, and that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. So you can check us out over there as well. And we have a website, which is trampledunderfootpodcast.com, where you can catch past episodes, download those to your podcatchers and listen to them on the go. And we're also sponsored by Harneal Media.
Yeah, Harneal Media. What Eloy said. You know him, you love him. He's out there in the chat with us right now. Our only moderator, as a matter of fact. Do yourself a favor, get over to harnealmedia.com if you're even toying with the idea of a website. Very, very reasonably priced, very competitively priced, and you wonder how he gets away with doing everything he does so cheaply. So again, do yourself a favor. Get over to harneilmedia.com, click that contact us button, and give Steve a shout and tell him we sent you. That's Harneil Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. Do the things you love. Do them safe if you can. And we'll be back. I mean, if you can. We're not here to tell you what to do, but, within measure, whatever. But be happy if you can. We'll be back next week. Same channel, same time. And I think we're out of here. Are we out of here?
One of us is.
Peace.